I was standing in my mother's hospital room when I placed the envelope on her bedside table. Inside wasn't money. It was a photograph of my daughter Chloe, 5 years old, sitting on the side of a highway with blood on her knees and tears streaming down her face. Beneath it, I had written just one line: "The debt isn't money, it's memory, and you'll live with it forever." My mother's face went white as she opened it. My father turned away, his hands shaking. That moment, watching them finally understand what they had done, was worth every sleepless night I had endured. But before I tell you how I got there, if you're enjoying this story of justice and redemption, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more stories like this, and drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in my situation. Your support means everything. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. It started on what was supposed to be a family road trip, but the seeds of that day had been planted long before. I should begin by telling you about my childhood, about growing up as Eleanor and Richard Mitchell's only daughter. From the outside, we looked perfect. My father owned a successful investment firm. My mother was on the board of 3 charities and never missed a country club luncheon. We lived in a sprawling house in the wealthy suburbs of San Antonio, with a pool, a 3-car garage, and neighbors who smiled and waved but never really knew what happened behind our pristine white doors. I was always a disappointment to them, though it took me years to understand why. I wasn't pretty enough, not in the way my mother valued. She had been a beauty queen in her youth, runner-up for Miss Texas in 1985, and she never let anyone forget it. She kept her tiara in a glass case in the living room, lit from below like a museum piece. My father was tall, athletic, the kind of man who played tennis every Saturday and golf every Sunday. They had expected a daughter who would be a reflection of their combined excellence. Instead, they got me. I was small for my age, with mousy brown hair that wouldn't hold a curl no matter how much my mother tried. I got my father's nearsightedness and my grandmother's round face. By the time I was 8, I was already wearing thick glasses that my mother constantly criticized. "Those frames make you look like a librarian," she would say, as if being a librarian was the worst possible fate. School was my escape. I loved reading, loved learning, loved the way teachers praised my essays and my science projects. But every A I brought home was met with a dismissive nod from my father and a comment from my mother about how academics wouldn't help me find a husband. When I was 12, I won the school spelling bee and qualified for regionals. I was so excited, practicing my words every night, dreaming of making it to nationals. The regional competition was on a Saturday. My mother refused to take me because it conflicted with her garden club's annual fundraiser. My father was playing in a golf tournament. I missed the competition. I never forgot the way my English teacher looked at me on Monday when I had to explain why I hadn't shown up. High school was worse. My mother enrolled me in every social activity she thought would make me more presentable. Cotillion classes where I learned to waltz with boys who made fun of my glasses. Debutante preparation courses, where the other girls came from old money families and made sure I knew my father's wealth was too new, too flashy, not refined enough. I tried to please her. I really did. I lost weight. I got contact lenses. I learned to apply makeup the way she insisted, though it never looked right on me. Nothing I did was ever enough. When I got accepted to UC Berkeley, I thought things might change. It was a good school, a great school actually, and I had earned a partial scholarship. But my mother's face when I told her was pure disgust. "California?" she said, as if I had suggested moving to Mars. "You'll come back with all sorts of liberal ideas and probably gain weight from all that hippie food." My father just grunted and went back to reading the Wall Street Journal. They paid for my tuition, but barely. I worked 3 part-time jobs to cover my living expenses. College was the first time I felt like I could breathe. I studied English literature and creative writing. I made friends who actually liked me for who I was, not who my parents wanted me to be. I dated a few guys, nothing serious until my senior year when I met David. He was a graduate student in the architecture program, tall and kind with an easy smile. We dated for 6 months. I thought I was in love. I thought he loved me too. I got pregnant 3 weeks before graduation. When I told David, he was gone within 48 hours, packed his apartment, dropped out of his program, and disappeared. I later found out through mutual friends that he had transferred to a school in New York and blocked my number. I never heard from him again. Telling my parents was the hardest thing I had ever done. I flew home right after graduation, my diploma in hand and morning sickness making the flight miserable. I sat them down in the living room, that same living room where my mother's tiara gleamed under its spotlight, and I told them I was pregnant. The silence that followed felt like it lasted hours. Then my mother stood up, walked over to me, and slapped me across the face. It wasn't hard enough to really hurt, but the shock of it, the humiliation, made my eyes water. "You stupid, stupid girl," she hissed. "Do you have any idea what this will do to our reputation? People will think we raised a tramp." My father didn't hit me, but his words cut deeper. "I always knew you would amount to nothing," he said quietly. "I just didn't think you would embarrass us quite this badly." They gave me two options. I could have an abortion and never speak of it again, or I could keep the baby, but they would tell everyone I was a surrogate for a friend, that I was doing a noble thing. When I refused both options and said I was keeping my baby and raising her as my own, my mother told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. They didn't come to the hospital when Chloe was born. I labored for 18 hours in a hospital in Oakland, surrounded by nurses I barely knew, no family, no partner, just me. When they placed Chloe in my arms, her tiny face scrunched up in red, her fingers curled into little fists, I fell in love in a way I had never experienced. This was mine. This beautiful, perfect little human was mine, and I would protect her with everything I had. The first 2 years were brutal. I moved back to Texas because I couldn't afford California rent on my own. I found a small apartment in Austin, 2 hours from my parents, close enough that I hoped they might want to be involved, but far enough that I had my own space. I worked as a copywriter for a small marketing firm during the day and wrote freelance articles at night after Chloe went to sleep. Money was always tight. There were weeks when I had to choose between buying myself groceries or buying Chloe new clothes she desperately needed because she was growing so fast. My parents came to visit exactly 3 times in those 2 years. Each visit was stiff and awkward. My mother would hold Chloe like she was holding a bag of garbage, at arm's length with a pained expression. My father would stay for exactly 20 minutes, check his watch constantly, and then announce they had to leave. They never offered to help financially. They never offered to babysit. They never asked how I was managing. When Chloe was 2.5, my boss at the marketing firm fired me. The official reason was budget cuts, but I knew it was really because I had missed too many days when Chloe was sick and daycare wouldn't take her. I applied for unemployment and spent my days sending out resumes while Chloe watched endless episodes of children's shows on our old television. That was when my mother called and suggested the road trip. It came completely out of nowhere. "Your father and I have been discussing it," she said in that crisp voice of hers. "And we think it would be good for Chloe to spend some quality time with her grandparents. We're planning a trip to Yellowstone. 3 weeks. We'll pay for everything. Consider it an olive branch." I should have known better. I should have heard the trap in her voice. But I was desperate. Desperate for their approval. Desperate for them to love my daughter the way I did. Desperate to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had changed. So I said yes. The morning we left, I remember packing Chloe's bag with such care. Her favorite stuffed rabbit. Extra changes of clothes because she was still having occasional accidents. Her pink sippy cup with the princess on it. Snacks she liked. A few books to read before bed. I packed my own bag with much less thought, threw in some jeans and t-shirts, a sweater in case it got cold in the mountains. My parents picked us up at 7 in the morning in their brand new black Cadillac Escalade. It still had that new car smell, and the leather seats were so pristine I was afraid to sit down. My mother took one look at my suitcase, a battered old thing I had bought at Goodwill, and wrinkled her nose. "You couldn't afford something nicer?" she asked. I ignored her and helped Chloe into the back seat, buckling her carefully into the booster seat my mother had installed. At least she had done that much. The first hour was quiet. My father drove with both hands on the wheel, his posture military straight. My mother sat next to him, checking her makeup in the visor mirror every few minutes. Chloe was in the middle seat, and I was next to her, my hand resting on her leg. She was being so good, looking out the window at the passing scenery, occasionally pointing at cows or horses in the fields. Then she started singing. It was a song from her daycare, something about a sunshine making her happy. Her voice was sweet and slightly off-key, the way all little kids sing. I smiled at her, encouraging. My mother reached over and turned the radio up, drowning her out. Chloe stopped singing, confused. She looked at me with those big brown eyes, and I shrugged, trying to tell her it was okay. "Mom," she was just singing, I said quietly. "She was making noise," my mother replied without turning around. "We'll be in this car for hours. I will not spend the entire trip listening to that." I bit my tongue. This was day 1, hour 1, and we were already at odds. I pulled out one of Chloe's books and read to her in a whisper. trying to keep her entertained. My father stopped for gas after 2 hours. While he was filling up, my mother turned around in her seat and looked at Chloe with an expression I couldn't quite read. "She looks nothing like our family," she said. "Must have gotten everything from her father's side." "She looks like me," I said defensively. And she did. She had my eyes, my smile, my small nose. "Exactly," my mother said, and turned back around. We stopped for lunch at a diner off the highway. It was one of those places with red vinyl booths and a menu that's 40 pages long because they serve breakfast all day. Chloe was hungry and excited. She loved eating out, probably because we rarely did it. She ordered chicken nuggets with a big smile, saying please and thank you to the waitress. I ordered a salad to save money. My father ordered a steak, rare, and my mother ordered a Cobb salad with the dressing on the side and no bacon and no cheese, which basically made it just lettuce. When the food came, Chloe started eating with her hands. She was 3 years old. It was chicken nuggets. Of course she was eating with her hands. My mother reached across the table and grabbed Chloe's wrist. "Use your fork," she commanded. Chloe's eyes filled with tears. "But Mama lets me." "I don't care what your mother lets you do. In this family, we have manners." I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab my daughter and walk out of that diner and hitchhike back home if I had to. But I didn't. I helped Chloe use her fork, cutting up her nuggets into smaller pieces, and I watched as my mother's mouth curved into a satisfied smirk. She had won this round, and she knew it. The tension in the car after lunch was suffocating. Chloe fell asleep, her head resting against my arm, and I was grateful she couldn't feel the atmosphere. My mother kept making comments. About my clothes, about my weight, about how I was raising Chloe, about how I had wasted my education, about how I would never find a decent man now that I had baggage. "No man wants to raise another man's child," she said at one point, as if Chloe wasn't sleeping right there, as if my daughter was trash to be disposed of. My father nodded in agreement. They had always been a united front against me. We drove for 6 hours that first day before stopping at a motel. It wasn't a nice place, despite my mother's usual standards. It was a budget chain off the highway with thin walls and a musty smell. My mother complained loudly at the front desk about the quality, but apparently she wasn't willing to spring for anything better. We had 2 rooms, one for my parents and one for Chloe and me. I gave Chloe a bath in the tiny motel bathroom, washing the road dust from her hair, letting her play with the few toys we had brought. She seemed quieter than usual. "Are you okay, baby?" I asked her. "Grandma doesn't like me," she said simply, with the brutal honesty of a 3-year-old. My heart broke. "That's not true," I lied. "She's just tired from driving." "She doesn't smile at me like Miss Jessica does." Miss Jessica was her daycare teacher, a warm woman in her 50s who hugged the kids and called them Sweet Pea. "Some people just aren't very smiley," I said, knowing how weak that sounded. I tucked her into bed, read her 3 stories, and held her hand until she fell asleep. Then I sat on the other bed and cried as quietly as I could. The second day was worse. We were heading through West Texas, miles and miles of flat nothing, heat shimmering on the horizon. The air conditioning in the Escalade was working overtime and the vents were blasting cold air, but the sun beating down on the black exterior made it feel like we were in an oven anyway. Chloe was restless. She had been trapped in a car seat for hours the day before, and now hours again today. She kept asking when we would get there, if we could stop and play, if she could run around. My mother's answers got shorter and sharper each time. "Not yet. No. Sit still." Around noon, we stopped at a gas station. It was one of those big travel centers with a restaurant and a convenience store. I took Chloe to the bathroom and then let her walk around the store, looking at the toys and snacks. She found a small stuffed dog, brown and floppy-eared, and hugged it to her chest. "Mama, can I have this, please?" I looked at the price tag. $15. I had exactly $40 in my wallet for the entire 3-week trip, money I had scraped together doing extra freelance work. But the way she was looking at that dog, with such hope and love, I couldn't say no. "Okay, baby. But you have to take really good care of it." She nodded solemnly and carried the dog like it was made of glass. We went to the counter and I paid, watching my emergency money dwindle. My mother was waiting by the car when we got back. She saw the dog immediately. "What is that?" she asked. "A toy. I bought it for Chloe." "With what money? I thought you were broke." "I'm not broke," I said, though we both knew I basically was. "I wanted to get her something." My mother snatched the dog from Chloe's arms. My daughter cried out, reaching for it. She doesn't need this. She has too many toys already. You're spoiling her, which is rich considering you can barely afford to feed yourself. Give it back, I said, my voice rising. I paid for it. It's hers. Nothing is hers. Nothing is yours. You're living on borrowed time and borrowed money, and the sooner you learn that, the better. But she did hand the dog back, throwing it at Chloe more than giving it. Chloe clutched it and climbed into the car, hiding her face against the worn fur. The rest of that day was silent. No one spoke. The radio played country music, sad songs about lost love and broken trucks. I watched the landscape roll by and wondered what I was doing here, why I had agreed to this trip, how I was going to survive 2.5 more weeks of this treatment. We stopped for the night at another motel, this one even worse than the first. There were stains on the carpet and the shower barely worked. I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to get Chloe away from my parents for a few hours. We ate vending machine dinner, crackers and a candy bar split between us, and I let her stay up late watching cartoons because I didn't have the heart to enforce bedtime. Day 3 was when everything fell apart. We had driven for about 4 hours when Chloe said she was thirsty. I had packed a cooler with juice boxes, keeping it at my feet in the back seat. I pulled one out, a small orange juice, and opened it for her. She took it carefully in both hands, sipping slowly. "Don't spill that," my mother said from the front seat, watching us in the passenger mirror. "She won't," I said. "She's being very careful." But fate or luck or just the universe's cruel sense of humor intervened. My father swerved slightly to avoid something in the road, a piece of tire or roadkill. I never saw it clearly. The car jerked. Chloe's hands, small and not quite coordinated enough, squeezed the juice box. Orange juice spurted out, onto her lap, onto the seat, onto the pristine leather that my mother cared more about than her own granddaughter. The scream that came from my mother was inhuman. It was rage and disgust and years of pent-up hatred all released in one sound. She whirled around in her seat, her face contorted, and before I could react, she had grabbed the juice box from Chloe's hands and hurled it out the window. I watched it tumble through the air, orange juice trailing behind it like a comet. "You little monster!" my mother shrieked. "You disgusting, clumsy little brat. Look what you've done." Chloe started crying, big, gasping sobs. I tried to comfort her, pulling her toward me, but my mother wasn't done. She was on a rampage now, all the venom she had been holding back for 3 days pouring out. "This is exactly what I expected from her, from both of you. You're trash. You've always been trash. You ruin everything you touch." "It was an accident," I shouted back. "She's 3 years old." "She's a mistake," my mother spat. "Just like you were a mistake, the biggest regret of my life." My father slammed on the brakes. The Escalade screeched to a stop on the shoulder of Interstate 10, somewhere in the emptiness of West Texas. Dust flew up around us. Cars whizzed past, their horns blaring at our sudden stop. "Richard, what are you doing?" my mother asked. My father didn't answer her. He turned around and looked at me with eyes that held nothing. No love, no regret, no humanity. Just cold, empty nothing. "Get out," he said. I thought I had misheard over Chloe's crying. "What?" "You and that child, get out of this vehicle, now." "Dad, we're in the middle of nowhere. It's 95 degrees outside." "I don't care if it's 110. You are no longer welcome on this trip. You are no longer welcome in this family. Get out." My mother was already opening her door. She came around to the back, yanked open the door next to Chloe, and started unbuckling her from the booster seat. I tried to stop her, but my mother was surprisingly strong when fueled by rage. She pulled Chloe out of the seat, and my daughter was screaming now, terrified and confused. I scrambled out of the car, trying to get to Chloe. My mother had her by the wrist, dragging her toward the gravel shoulder. "Let go of her," I screamed. "You want her so badly? You can have her. You can have each other. You deserve each other." My mother released Chloe's wrist with a shove. My baby fell forward onto the gravel and rocks, her hands and knees scraping against the sharp edges. Blood immediately welled up on her pale skin. She was screaming, crying, looking up at me with absolute terror. I dropped to the ground beside her, gathering her into my arms. Blood was soaking through her little denim shorts, mixing with the dirt and dust. "It's okay, baby. It's okay. Mama's got you," I kept saying, over and over, while she sobbed into my shoulder. Behind me, I heard the Escalade door slam. The engine revved. I looked up just in time to see my mother's face in the side mirror, not a trace of remorse, just satisfaction. Then they were gone, speeding away down the highway, leaving us in a cloud of dust and exhaust fumes. I sat there on the side of the road, holding my bleeding, terrified daughter, and I felt something inside me break. Not break like shatter, but break like a bone that heals back stronger. Break like a cocoon opening. Every ounce of love I had ever tried to earn from those people evaporated in that moment. Every desperate attempt to be good enough, to be worthy, to be loved, burned away in the Texas sun. Mama, why did they leave us? Chloe hiccuped against my chest. Because they're bad people, baby, I said, and it was the first honest thing I had said about my parents in my entire life. But we're going to be okay. I promise you, we're going to be okay. I checked her injuries. The cuts on her knees and palms weren't deep, but they were dirty. I used my t-shirt to wipe away as much blood as I could. I had my purse, thank God, which meant I had my wallet and my phone. The phone had a crack across the screen from when I dropped it a month ago, but it still worked. I had 1 bar of service. I called 911 first. The dispatcher was kind but firm. They couldn't send an ambulance for minor injuries, and they couldn't consider it a police matter until 24 hours had passed, because technically I was an adult who could care for herself. She did give me the number for a local taxi service. I called them next. The dispatcher said it would be 45 minutes to an hour before someone could reach our location. So, we waited. I sat on the gravel with my back against the guardrail, Chloe in my lap, her face pressed against my chest. Cars passed us, hundreds of them. Some slowed down slightly, faces in windows staring at us with curiosity or concern, but no one stopped. I thought about that later, about how many people saw a woman and a small child stranded on the highway and just kept driving. Maybe they thought we were waiting for someone. Maybe they didn't want to get involved. Maybe they just didn't care. The sun beat down on us. I had nothing to shade us with. I tried to cover Chloe with my body, but I could feel her skin getting hot beneath her clothes. She had stopped crying, but she was worryingly quiet, occasionally shuddering with leftover sobs. I sang to her, every lullaby I knew, every silly song from her daycare, anything to keep her calm and keep myself from falling apart. A semi-truck pulled over after about 30 minutes. The driver was a Hispanic man, probably in his 50s, with kind eyes and work-worn hands. He climbed down from his cab and approached us carefully, probably afraid I would think he was a threat. "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need help?" His accent was thick, but his concern was clear. "We're waiting for a taxi," I managed to say. "We had some car trouble." He looked at Chloe's bloody knees and then at my face, and I think he knew I was lying. "Let me at least get you some water. You shouldn't be out here in this heat." He went back to his truck and returned with 2 cold bottles of water and a first aid kit. I accepted them gratefully and cleaned Chloe's wounds properly while he watched at a respectful distance. He told me his name was Miguel. He had 3 daughters, he said, all grown now. He couldn't just drive past us. "What happened?" he asked gently. I don't know why I told him. Maybe because he was a stranger and I would never see him again. Maybe because the truth was burning inside me and I had to let it out. I told him about my parents, about the road trip, about the juice box and the blood and being abandoned. He listened, his face growing darker with anger. "That's illegal," he said. "You can call the police. Press charges." "I just want to get my daughter somewhere safe," I said. Miguel nodded. He waited with us until the taxi came, a beat-up sedan driven by a thin man who barely spoke. Miguel pressed a $50 bill into my hand before we left. "For the little one," he said. "Take care of her." The taxi took us to Sweetwater, the nearest town. It was small and dusty, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and strangers are noted. The driver dropped us at the only motel in town, the Desert Rose. The sign was faded and the pink paint was peeling, but the woman at the front desk was sympathetic when she saw Chloe's bandaged knees. "Poor baby," she said. She gave us a room on the ground floor, one with 2 double beds and a bathroom that smelled like bleach. I paid for 3 nights, watching my $40 become $13. I had no idea how I would pay for a 4th night. That first night in the Desert Rose, I put Chloe to bed and then sat in the bathroom with the door closed and the shower running to cover the sound of my crying. I cried for hours. I cried out of fear, out of exhaustion, out of the horrible realization that my parents had finally shown me their true nature and there was no going back from this. I cried because I was trapped in a strange town with no money and no resources, and a traumatized 3-year-old who kept asking when we were going home. The next morning, I started survival mode. I walked Chloe to a local church that someone at the motel had told me about. They ran a free daycare program from 9 to 2 on weekdays. The woman who ran it, a grandmother named Betty with silver hair and a soft voice, took one look at us and asked if we needed help. I told her we were going through a hard time, but we would be fine. She didn't push, just said Chloe was welcome there as long as we needed. I spent that day walking the streets of Sweetwater, going into every business with a help wanted sign. There weren't many. Small-town Texas wasn't exactly booming with opportunity. I filled out an application at a gas station, at a Dollar General, at a small grocery store. No one called. On the third day, I walked into a diner called Rosie's. It was a small place, probably sat 40 people at capacity, with checkered floors and pictures of old movie stars on the walls. A woman was wiping down tables, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked up when the bell over the door chimed. "Kitchen's not open for another hour," she said. "I'm looking for work," I replied. "Any work. I can cook, clean, wait tables, whatever you need." She studied me for a long moment. "You running from something?" "I'm running to something," I said. "A better life for my daughter." Her expression softened. "Can you start today?" That was how I met Margaret, the owner of Rosie's. She paid me $6 an hour under the table, which was below minimum wage, but I wasn't in a position to negotiate. I worked the lunch and early dinner shifts, washing dishes mostly, but sometimes helping with prep work. My hands were constantly in hot water and harsh soap. Within a week, they were cracked and bleeding, but I didn't care. It was money. $6 an hour, 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, $180 a week. After paying for the motel and buying food, I had almost nothing left. I needed more money. I found it at a local office building that needed a night janitor. The property management company that hired me didn't ask many questions. 4 hours a night, 5 nights a week, $8 an hour, another $160 a week. My life became a brutal routine. Wake up at 5:30, get myself and Chloe ready, walk her to the church daycare by 8:30, get to Rosie's by 9, work until 3, pick up Chloe. Spend a few hours with her at the motel, trying to make her smile, trying to pretend everything was normal. Put her to bed at 7, leave for my cleaning job at 8, work until midnight. Walk back to the motel in the dark, sleep for 5 hours, repeat. I was exhausted every single second of every single day. My body ached constantly. I lost weight I didn't have to lose. I developed a persistent cough from the cleaning chemicals, but Chloe had food, she had shelter, she had me, and slowly, very slowly, she started to seem more like herself. The nightmares continued, but they became less frequent. She made friends at the daycare. She laughed sometimes. 3 weeks into our new life, something happened that I never expected. I was at the local grocery store on a Sunday morning, my one morning off. I had $22 to spend on food for the week, and I was standing in the cereal aisle trying to figure out if I could stretch it to include a box of Cheerios for Chloe when I heard someone say my name. "Clara? Clara Mitchell?" I turned around and came face to face with a ghost from my past. Jake Morrison stood there, and for a moment I didn't recognize him. He had been a skinny, awkward kid in middle school, all elbows and bad hair. The man in front of me was confident, well-dressed, broad-shouldered. But when he smiled, I saw the boy I used to know. "Jake?" I managed to say. "Oh my God, it really is you. What are you doing in Sweetwater?" The question was innocent, but it hit me like a punch. What was I doing in Sweetwater? Living in a motel, working 2 jobs that barely paid, hiding from my parents, trying to keep my daughter fed and safe. I felt tears spring to my eyes before I could stop them. Jake's smile disappeared. "Hey, are you okay?" And just like that, standing in the cereal aisle of a small-town grocery store, I broke down. Not loudly, but tears started streaming down my face and I couldn't make them stop. Jake looked around, clearly uncomfortable but also concerned. He gently took the basket from my hands and led me outside to the parking lot. We sat on a bench outside the store, the Texas sun beating down on us, and I told him everything. About my parents, about the road trip, about being left on the highway. About Chloe's injuries, about the motel, about working myself into the ground just to survive. He listened to all of it, his expression growing darker and angrier with every sentence. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "That's child abandonment. That's a crime, Clara. You could press charges." "I don't want to press charges," I said, wiping my eyes. "I just want to take care of my daughter." "Where is she now?" "At the motel. A woman there is watching her for a couple hours while I shop." Jake stood up. "Show me." I don't know why I agreed. Maybe because he was familiar. A connection to a time when my life made sense. Maybe because I was so tired of doing everything alone. We drove to the Desert Rose in his car, a sleek silver sedan that looked completely out of place in this dusty town. The woman watching Chloe, a kind soul named Rita who lived 3 doors down from our room, looked relieved when I arrived. I paid her the $5 I had promised and introduced her to Jake. Jake met Chloe and she took to him immediately, which surprised me. She was usually wary of men after everything that had happened. But Jake knew how to talk to kids. He sat on the floor of our crappy motel room and listened to her tell him about her stuffed dog and her friends at daycare and the picture she had drawn. He looked at her bandaged knees and his jaw tightened, but he kept his voice gentle. After Chloe went back to playing, Jake and I sat outside on the concrete walkway. "I'm a lawyer now?" he said. "Corporate law, mostly. I'm actually here visiting a client who owns a manufacturing plant outside of town." "That's great," I said, and I meant it. Jake had always been smart. "I work for a firm in Dallas. Good firm, good benefits, good pay." He paused. "Clara, I want to help you. Let me help you." "I can't take your money," I said immediately. "I'm not offering money. Well, not just money. I'm offering resources. I can help you get a real apartment, a real job. You have a degree from Berkeley, you shouldn't be washing dishes for $6 an hour." "I don't have any other options right now." "Yes, you do. Me. I'm your option." Over the next 2 months, Jake became our lifeline. He helped us move to Dallas, into a small 2-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood. He co-signed the lease because I had no credit and no rental history. He connected me with a receptionist position at a law firm in downtown Dallas. Not his firm, which I appreciated because I didn't want to feel like I owed him more than I already did. The job paid $35,000 a year with benefits, which felt like winning the lottery after what I had been making. He recommended a child psychologist for Chloe, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who was patient and kind. Chloe started seeing her twice a week. Dr. Chen diagnosed her with trauma-related anxiety and started play therapy. Slowly, Chloe began to open up about what had happened on the highway, about her feelings about her grandparents, about her fears of being left again. Jake was careful about his involvement. He never pushed himself into our lives. He would stop by once a week to check on us, always calling first, always bringing something small like groceries or a toy for Chloe. He never asked for anything in return. He never made me feel like I was a burden. It was so different from how my parents had treated me that sometimes it made me cry. 3 months after we moved to Dallas, Jake asked me to dinner. Just the 2 of us. His sister would babysit Chloe. I almost said no because the last thing I needed was to complicate our friendship with romance. But something in his eyes, something genuine and hopeful, made me say yes. The dinner was at a small Italian restaurant, nothing fancy but nice. We talked about everything except my parents. We talked about college, about mutual friends we had lost touch with, about his job and my new job. We talked about Chloe and how much she was healing. And somewhere between the pasta and the tiramisu, I realized I was falling for him. Or maybe I had been falling for him since that day in the grocery store, and I was just now letting myself acknowledge it. Jake walked me to my apartment door that night. He didn't try to kiss me. He just said, "I really like spending time with you, Clara. Both of you. I hope we can do this again." We did do it again, and again, and again. Our relationship developed slowly, carefully. Jake understood that I was damaged. That trust was hard for me. He never rushed me. When he finally kissed me, 2 months after that first dinner, it was soft and sweet, and everything a first kiss should be. Chloe adored him. She started calling him Jake, and he would spend hours playing with her, reading to her, teaching her things. 6 months into our relationship, she asked me if Jake could be her daddy. The question broke my heart and filled it at the same time. That night, after Chloe was asleep, I talked to Jake about it. "She wants you to be her father," I said carefully. "How do you feel about that?" Jake looked at me with complete seriousness. "Clara, I love that little girl like she's already mine. And I love you. If you'll let me, I want to be in both of your lives permanently." "What does permanently mean?" I asked, afraid of the answer but also desperate for it. "It means I want us to be a family," he said simply. "All 3 of us." We didn't get engaged right away. We wanted to make sure Chloe was ready, that we were ready. But we started talking about the future in concrete terms. Marriage, adoption, maybe more kids someday. A house instead of an apartment. Normal, boring, beautiful things that I had never dared to dream about before. Life was good. Not perfect, but good. I got promoted at the law firm. Chloe started kindergarten and thrived. Her nightmares became rare. Jake was a constant, steady presence in our lives. We were happy. Then the letter came. It arrived on a Tuesday, about 10 months after the highway incident. I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately on the cream-colored envelope. My hands shook as I opened it. Jake was at work. Chloe was at school. I was alone in our apartment, staring at my mother's perfect script. Dear Clara, it read, I am writing to inform you that your father and I have made the decision to formally sever our relationship with you. Your behavior during our family trip was unacceptable and frankly embarrassing. We have decided that we will no longer tolerate your drama and desperate attempts to seek attention from us. We are removing you from our will and all family documents. Do not attempt to contact us for any reason. If you do, we will pursue legal action for harassment. As far as we are concerned, you are no longer our daughter and that child is no longer our responsibility. We expect you to respect our wishes and stay away from our lives. Consider this your only warning. Eleanor Mitchell. I read it 3 times. With each reading, I felt something different. The first time, I felt hurt. The second time, I felt angry. The third time, I started laughing. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who has finally, completely, been set free. They thought this was a punishment. They thought removing me from their will, disowning me, was the worst thing they could do to me. They had no idea that it was the best gift they had ever given me. I didn't want their money. I didn't want their name. I didn't want anything from them except to be left alone. I showed the letter to Jake when he came home that evening. He read it carefully, his jaw clenching. They're unbelievable, he said. The audacity to act like you did something wrong. They've always been like this, I said. I just couldn't see it clearly before. What do you want to do? Jake asked. I tore the letter into small pieces and threw them in the trash. Nothing, I said. They don't exist to me anymore. They've done me a favor. And for a while, that was true. We went on with our lives. Jake and I got engaged on Chloe's 6th birthday. She was thrilled, jumping up and down and screaming that Jake was going to be her real daddy now. We planned a small wedding for the following spring. Nothing elaborate, just close friends and Jake's family, who had welcomed us with open arms. Chloe's therapy was going well. Dr. Chen said she was making remarkable progress. The incident on the highway would always be a part of her story, but it wouldn't define her. She was a resilient, smart, funny kid with a future full of possibilities. I thought we were done with my parents. I thought they were out of our lives forever, but the past has a way of coming back, especially when people get desperate. The phone call came on a Thursday in March, almost exactly a year after the highway incident. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway, thinking it might be related to Chloe's school. Is this Clara Mitchell? A woman's voice, professional and detached. Yes, who is this? This is Mercy General Hospital in San Antonio. I'm calling about Richard Mitchell. He was admitted this morning with a severe heart attack. He's currently stable, but his condition is serious. Eleanor Mitchell requested that we contact you. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My father was dying. My first thought wasn't concern or fear. It was suspicion. Why would they contact me after everything? After the letter? After the highway? After years of treating me like garbage? Is he going to survive? I asked, my voice flat. We're cautiously optimistic, but the next 48 hours are critical. Will you be able to come? I should have said no. Every rational part of my brain was screaming no, but there was a small, damaged part of me that still wanted answers. That still needed to look them in the eye and understand how they could have done what they did. I'll be there, I said. Jake insisted on coming with me. You're not facing them alone, he said firmly. We left Chloe with Jake's sister and made the 4-hour drive to San Antonio. The whole drive, I felt sick with anxiety. What would I say? What would they say? Would they apologize? Would they pretend nothing had happened? Mercy General was a large, modern hospital in the nicer part of San Antonio. We found the cardiac unit and Richard's room. My mother was sitting in a chair by the window, staring out at the parking lot. She looked older than I remembered. Her hair, always perfectly colored and styled, had streaks of gray. She had lost weight. When she turned and saw me, her expression flickered through several emotions too quickly for me to identify them all. You came, she said. Not hello, not thank you. Just an observation. You called, I replied. My father was in the hospital bed, hooked up to a terrifying array of machines. His skin was gray, His breathing labored even with the oxygen tube in his nose. He looked old and fragile in a way that shocked me. When I was growing up, my father had seemed invincible, a tall, imposing figure who controlled every room he entered. Now he looked small. He opened his eyes when he heard my voice. "Clara," he rasped. "How are you feeling?" I asked, because I didn't know what else to say. "How do you think?" My mother snapped. "Your father is dying." "Then why did you call me? According to your letter, I'm not your daughter anymore." My mother's face flushed. She glanced at Jake, clearly not pleased that I had brought someone with me. "Can we speak privately?" "No," I said. "Anything you have to say, you can say in front of Jake." There was a long, tense silence. Then my mother stood up and smoothed her skirt, gathering her composure. "We thought you should know about your father's condition. Family should be informed of these things." "But I'm not family," I said. "You made that very clear." "Don't be dramatic, Clara. You've always been so dramatic." Something snapped inside me. "Dramatic? You threw my daughter out of a moving vehicle onto a highway and I'm being dramatic?" "It wasn't moving," my mother said coldly. "We had stopped. You pulled her out of the car and left her on the side of the road. She was bleeding. She was terrified. She still has nightmares about it." "She spilled juice on a $40,000 car," my mother said, as if that justified everything. I stared at her, and in that moment I understood with perfect clarity that she would never see herself as wrong. She was incapable of it. In her mind, she was the victim. "Always. Why did you really call me here?" I asked quietly. My mother's eyes flicked to my purse. Just for a second, but I saw it. And I understood. "You need money," I said. "We don't need anything from you," my mother said quickly. Too quickly. I looked at my father, who wouldn't meet my eyes. "How bad is it?" "The medical bills are substantial," my mother admitted. "Insurance doesn't cover everything. We've had some other financial setbacks. But we're managing." "Except you're not," I said. "That's why you called me. You thought I would come here and offer to help. You thought you could manipulate me one more time." "We raised you," my father said weakly from the bed. "We fed you, clothed you, gave you opportunities. You tolerated me," I corrected. "You made me feel worthless every single day of my childhood. And when I had the audacity to create a life for myself and have a child who you deemed unacceptable, you tried to destroy us." From my purse, I pulled out an envelope. I had prepared it before leaving Dallas, not sure if I would actually use it. Inside were copies of everything. Chloe's therapy bills, over $8,000 so far. The medical report from the urgent care clinic in Sweetwater that documented her injuries, rent receipts from the Desert Rose Motel showing how little we had been surviving on, and on top, a photograph. Miguel, the truck driver, had taken it without me noticing. I didn't discover it until weeks later when he had tracked me down at Rosie's and given me a printed copy. It showed me sitting on the side of the highway, Chloe in my lap, her knees bloody, both of us covered in dust and despair. It was a horrific image, the kind that made your heart hurt just looking at it. On the back, I had written in marker, "The debt isn't money, it's memory, and you'll live with it forever." I placed the envelope on the rolling table beside my father's bed. My mother reached for it immediately, probably expecting cash or a check. She opened it and her face went white. She stared at the photograph for a long moment, then looked up at me. "What is this supposed to be?" she asked, but her voice shook. "That's what you did to us," I said calmly. "That's your granddaughter, bleeding and terrified on the side of a highway because you decided she wasn't worth the cost of cleaning a leather seat. I want you to have that picture. I want you to keep it. And I want you to know that every single nightmare Chloe still has, every time she panics when someone raises their voice, every moment of fear and pain she's experienced, that's on you." My father turned his face to the wall. My mother's hands were shaking so badly she dropped the photograph. It fell face up on the floor, Chloe's tear-stained face looking up at all of us. "I don't want your money," I continued. "I don't want your apologies, though I'm sure they wouldn't be sincere anyway. I don't want anything from you. I just want you to know that actions have consequences. You taught me that, actually. You spent my whole life telling me I had to face the consequences of my choices. Well, now you get to face yours." "You're making a mistake," my mother said, finding her voice. "We're your family." "No," I said firmly. "Jake is my family. Chloe is my family. You're just the people who gave birth to me. There's a difference." Jake and I left. We walked out of that hospital room and I didn't look back. In the elevator, Jake took my hand. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I will be," I said. And I meant it. We drove back to Dallas in silence. I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. I felt empty in a way that was almost peaceful. I had said what I needed to say. I had looked them in the eye and they had flinched first. It was over. But it wasn't over. Not quite. 3 months later, the phone calls started, always from my mother's cell phone. I never answered. She left voicemails, dozens of them, and against my better judgment, I listened to a few. "Clara, please, we need to talk. Clara, your father has been released from the hospital, but he's not doing well. Clara, I know I wasn't the best mother, but I'm trying. Clara, please, we're in trouble. The medical bills are overwhelming us. Clara, the bank is foreclosing on the house. We have nowhere to go." Each message was more desperate than the last. I blocked her number. She started calling from different numbers. I blocked those too. She sent letters. I threw them away unopened. Then she showed up. It was a Saturday afternoon in June. Jake had taken Chloe to the zoo, giving me a few hours to myself. I was cleaning the apartment, music playing, feeling content with my life. When the knock came at the door, I thought maybe it was a package delivery. I looked through the peephole and my blood went cold. My mother stood there, and she looked terrible. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair was messy, and she had clearly been crying. Part of me wanted to just not answer, to pretend I wasn't home. But a bigger part of me needed to end this once and for all. I opened the door but left the chain lock on. "What do you want, Eleanor?" She flinched at me using her first name. "Clara, please, I need to talk to you." "So talk. Can I come in?" "No." She looked like I had slapped her. "Clara, I drove 4 hours to see you." "I didn't ask you to." "Please, I'm desperate. We're going to lose the house. Everything is falling apart. Your father's medical bills are destroying us. I have nowhere else to turn." "That's not my problem," I said calmly. "I'm your mother." "No, you're the woman who gave birth to me. There's a difference. A mother wouldn't have done what you did." "I made a mistake," she said, and tears started streaming down her face. "I made a terrible mistake. But I'm begging you, please help us. I have no one else." I looked at her, really looked at her, and I felt nothing. No sympathy, no guilt, no love, just emptiness. "Do you know what it felt like?" I asked quietly. "Sitting on that highway with my daughter bleeding in my arms, watching you drive away like we were garbage you had just thrown out?" I was angry. I wasn't thinking clearly. "You were thinking very clearly. You've always thought clearly about how little you care about me. The only reason you're here now is because you're out of options. You don't love me. You don't love Chloe, you just need money." "That's not true," she protested, but we both knew it was. "Let me tell you about my life now," I said. "I have a good job that I love. I have a beautiful apartment. My daughter is happy and healthy and thriving. I'm engaged to a man who actually loves me and treats me with respect. I'm building a life that's everything I ever wanted. And none of it involves you. Please," she whispered, "I'm begging you. You want to know what desperation feels like? You want to know what it's like to have nothing and no one? Good. Now you know. Now you understand exactly what you put us through, and just like you said to me on that highway, I don't carry trash." I saw the impact of my words hit her like a physical blow. She actually staggered back a step. "You're just like me," she said, her voice turning vicious, cold and cruel. "No," I said firmly. "I'm nothing like you. I would never hurt my child the way you hurt me. I would never abandon her when she needed me most. I'm protecting myself and my daughter from someone who's proven they're toxic and dangerous. That's not cruelty. That's survival." I closed the door. I locked it. And I listened to her sob on the other side for about 10 minutes before she finally left. When I was sure she was gone, I sat on the couch and let myself feel everything. Relief, anger, sadness for the mother I had always wanted but never had. And finally, peace. That night, Jake and I talked about whether I should get a restraining order. We decided to wait and see if my mother would respect the boundary I had set. She didn't contact me again after that. I heard through a mutual acquaintance months later that she and my father had lost their house and moved into a small rental apartment on the other side of town. But that wasn't the end of the story. A week after my mother's visit, Jake came home from work with a strange expression on his face. "I need to show you something," he said. He pulled out a folder from his briefcase and handed it to me. Inside were documents, financial records, emails, bank statements. I looked through them, confused. "What is this?" I hired a private investigator, Jake said. I wanted to know why your parents were in such bad financial shape. I thought maybe it would help you decide how to handle their requests for money. Okay. Clara, your parents aren't just broke because of medical bills. They've been running a scheme for years. They've been taking money from small investors, promising high returns, and then hiding the assets. It's fraud. Full-scale investment fraud. I stared at him. What? There are at least a dozen victims that the investigator found. Mostly people they knew from the country club, people who trusted them. They've taken hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more. My mind was reeling. Are you sure? The investigator is sure. And Clara, this isn't just morally wrong, it's illegal. They could go to prison. I looked at the documents again, actually reading them this time. Bank transfers to offshore accounts, forged signatures, false promises in writing. It was all there, meticulously documented. What do I do with this? I asked. Jake sat down beside me and took my hand. That's entirely up to you. You could turn this over to the police. They would investigate, and if the evidence holds up, your parents would be arrested. Or you could do nothing. Walk away and let karma eventually catch up to them. I sat with the folder for 3 days, thinking about what to do. Part of me wanted to walk away, to let them suffer but not be the one to cause their downfall. But another part of me, the part that thought about Chloe and all the other potential victims, knew I couldn't just ignore this. I called Detective Miller of the San Antonio Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. He agreed to meet with me and Jake at a coffee shop halfway between San Antonio and Dallas. He was a serious man in his 50s with tired eyes and a firm handshake. I gave him the folder and told him everything. About my parents, about the highway, about the fraud. Detective Miller looked through the documents carefully. This is good work, he said. Normally these cases are nearly impossible to prove, but you've given me everything I need. Are you prepared for what comes next? There will be an investigation. It will be public. Your parents will know you're the one who turned them in. I know, I said, but I can't let them hurt anyone else. That's very brave of you, Miss Mitchell. It's not bravery, I said. It's just the right thing to do. The investigation took 4 months. During that time, Jake and I got married in a small ceremony at a friend's backyard. Chloe was our flower girl, wearing a white dress and the biggest smile I had ever seen. When the officiant said we were now a family, Chloe cheered so loudly everyone laughed. 2 weeks later, the adoption papers went through. Jake officially became Chloe's father. She started calling him Dad, and every time she said it, I fell in love with him a little more. The news broke in August. Prominent San Antonio couple charged with investment fraud. It was front-page news in the local papers and made the evening news broadcasts. My parents were arrested, their assets were frozen, and the full scope of their crimes came to light. They had defrauded 17 different people out of over $900,000. The trial was quick. With the evidence the investigator had gathered and the testimony from the victims, there wasn't much room for defense. My parents tried to claim they had made honest mistakes, that they were victims of bad advice from financial advisors. No one believed them. The jury came back with a guilty verdict after less than 4 hours of deliberation. Richard got 5 years. Eleanor got 7 because the evidence showed she had been the primary orchestrator. I didn't go to the trial. I didn't need to. Jake went to a few days of it and came home telling me how my mother had cried on the stand, how my father had looked broken. I felt no satisfaction in their suffering. I felt nothing. Instead of focusing on them, I focused on building something positive. With Jake's support and some money we had saved, I started a non-profit organization called Chloe's Hope. Our mission was to help single mothers who had been abandoned, abused, or were struggling to survive. We provided emergency housing assistance, job placement services, legal aid, and counseling referrals. Chloe, now 7 years old, helped design the logo. She drew a picture of a sun coming up over a horizon, and a graphic designer friend turned it into something beautiful. We put it on business cards and flyers and our website. The first woman we helped was named Maria. She was 24 with a 3-year-old son. Her family had kicked her out when she left an abusive boyfriend, and she had been living in her car for 2 weeks. When she came to our small office, located in a donated space downtown, she looked so much like I had looked a year ago. Scared, exhausted, desperate. I hugged her and told her she wasn't alone. We found Maria a temporary apartment, helped her get a job at a call center, connected her with free therapy services, and helped her file a restraining order against her ex. 3 months later, she came back to our office with her son, both of them smiling. She had saved up enough for a deposit on her own place. She was thriving. "You saved my life," she told me, tears in her eyes. "No," I said. "You saved your own life. I just helped." Over the next year, Chloe's hope helped 37 families, 37 mothers, and their children who got a second chance at life. Every single one of them reminded me of myself and Chloe. Every single one of them proved that with support and resources, people could overcome incredible odds. Chloe was thriving too. Dr. Chen eventually graduated her from therapy, saying she was one of the most resilient children she had ever worked with. Chloe joined a soccer team and made best friends with a girl named Emma who lived in our building. She loved school. She loved her dad Jake. She loved our life. One Saturday afternoon, about 2 years after everything fell apart and came back together, the three of us went to the beach. It was Chloe's idea. She wanted to see the ocean, to collect shells, to build sandcastles. Jake and I were happy to indulge her. We walked along the shore as the sun set, painting the sky in oranges and purples. Chloe ran ahead, laughing as the waves chased her feet. Jake took my hand, and we watched our daughter play. Our daughter, not just mine anymore, ours. "Do you ever regret it?" Jake asked quietly, not trying to reconcile with them. I thought about it, really thought about it. "No," I said. "I gave them 28 years of trying to earn their love. I'm not giving them another second, but I don't hate them anymore either. I just don't think about them." "What do you think about?" Jake asked, smiling. I looked at Chloe, at her joy and her freedom. I looked at Jake, at the man who had given us both a new life. "I think about how we didn't just survive," I said. "We built something better. Something real." Chloe ran back to us, her hands full of shells. "Look what I found!" She showed us each one, explaining in detail why it was special, why it was treasure, and we listened. Because that's what parents do. Real parents. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we walked back to the car, Chloe between us, holding both our hands. She looked up at the darkening sky and said, "I like our family, Mama. I like our family, Dad." "Me too, baby," I said. "Me too." Sometimes I think about my mother in prison. I wonder if she understands now what she did. I wonder if she has regrets. But mostly, I don't wonder at all. Because her story is over, and mine is just beginning. I learned something in those dark days after the highway. I learned that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about love and choice and showing up. It's about protecting the people who matter, even when it costs you everything. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to settle for less. My parents taught me what not to be. Jake and Chloe taught me what I could become. And Chloe's hope taught me that pain has purpose if you let it, if you use it to help others. If you refuse to let it define you. I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a survivor, a mother, a wife, a woman who knows her value. And I'm teaching my daughter to know hers too, so that she never, ever accepts the kind of treatment I endured, so that she grows up strong and loved and certain of her place in this world. That highway in Texas was the end of one life and the beginning of another, and I would do it all again, every painful step, to end up here, in this life, with these people, with this love, because we're not just okay, we're better than okay. We're happy, and that, I've learned, is the best revenge of all. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to walk away from family to save yourself? Have you ever had to choose between loyalty and your own well-being? What would you have done in my situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories of survival and redemption. Your support means the world. Thank you for listening to my story.